Hola amigos de Retumba. My name is Hannes Grossmann. I'm the drummer from Alkaloid, and we have a new album out on September 15 on Season of Mist Records. We did a lengthy interview in detail about our new album and a lot of other things, and don't miss it out. It's really interesting. Hope to see you soon in Mexico.
Oh. Johannes, thank you for being here. How are you today?
Today I'm a little tired, but apart from that, I'm doing fine.
Well,
I cannot. I'm seeing myself in the camera all the time. I wish I could mute that, but yeah. Well, it is what it is.
do you hear yourself also?
Yeah, I see myself, and that's like distracting because I see like I'm pretty red in that light. Well, anyways, there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I'm really good. So
Okay, perfect. Well, I appreciate to take on my invitation to have a conversation about your new album from
sure.
Alkaloid. But first, let's start with a bit of an icebreaker question, and because I am interested in how different these stories are from interview to interview, and also because I would like to give the opportunity to anyone out there listening or watching this interview to know more about the artist in question. So, Johannes, how were you first introduced to heavy music? Your first interactions with metal or strict music as a whole? And also, how is that story related to you starting to play drums and then becoming a professional drummer?
My first like interaction where I would say it was conscious, and I can remember that, and it caused something was, I would say, listening to the music of my parents at some point, and they're listening to the stuff they grew up with, like 1960s rock music.
Mm.
I mean, it's great music. There are a lot of great bands, and when I was like young, I listened to all of that. Actually, it took me like until I was like 15 or 16 before I bought an album that is newer than 1975 or something. You know,
Okay.
so I was only listening to the old stuff and loved that. And yeah, I had a thing for drums because at like a friend of mine had a drum set. You know, it's this typical household where you do like sports and where you go to the gym or you take an instrument, you know, like more like
Yeah.
as part of that's what you do, like in a I don't know, middle class household, and
Yeah.
if you will, um, you know, get children education and stuff. And but I was really fascinated with the drums, and so that stuck with me, and you know, my parents recognized that, and then I got like a beginner drum kit, and that was for me like heaven because it's a real like drum kit that sounds like a drum kit, and I could play on, and you know, um, so I at first I tried to you know play the songs from the Beatles that I was listening to and stuff like that, and I took drum lessons, and the more I understood, when I listened to Led Zeppelin, what actually happens in the drums, and I was really fascinated by that. So, um, and they have like some heavier tunes, like heavier
Yeah.
from the perspective of a guy who only listens to 60s rock music. Led Zeppelin is pretty heavy. Then I discovered Deep Purple, which are even heavier. And then from there on, slowly I got like into like more the traditional heavy metal, um, like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and that kind of stuff. And yeah, um, that's how it went, I would say. Like pretty natural to me.
So this happened how early in your life, in the 90s, or
Um, I started playing the drums when I was 10 years old.
okay.
Yeah, it was the 90s. I remember that at a certain point when I was like would say 12 or something, Nirvana was really big. That was after he shot himself.
Right.
And MTV Germany played their Unplugged show on a loop. And the thing is, I really did not like it. Like not a tiny bit. I hated everything about it because it was I don't know, taste, right?
Yeah.
Um, but compared to their normal sound, like this unplugged stuff seemed like pretty well. I mean, still, they played it on repeat, like
Okay.
all the time. Every time I would switch on MTV, there was like some Nirvana unplugged song, and I couldn't stand it. And everybody at school was listening to that, and I'm like, yeah, this can't be. It can't be the only type of music. That's the future line. No, I wanted to listen to like Deep Purple and Led Zeppelin and Iron Maiden and that kind of stuff, and that was in the '90s pretty small, you know. And so it was not a good time to get into metal because
Yeah.
metal was pretty dead and there was like this grunge thing everywhere. And I still don't really like it. It's if you're 10 years older, I guess you appreciate it more, but or 10 years younger, I don't know. But like when I was in the '90s, I wanted metal, not like this, wannabe metal, like that is grunge
Yeah.
music. Now I'm 40 years old and I like it a little bit better, you know. But back then I really did not like it, like one bit. And that also I must say was an influence for me because I started to search for different things, and it wasn't that easy back in the days because you couldn't just switch on Spotify and doom scroll through the artists. You really had to know people that know the stuff that can maybe give you a CD or a LP that you can listen to, and then I would copy that LP or CD on my tape and listen it on my Walkman
Yeah.
on the way to school and back. Only one album, like for 1 month, and that was what it was. But I was fascinated by that. And then early on, I have to say I was listening to Rush, and
Okay.
you know also in terms of drumming, that was interesting. And so I would say more the more popular progressive rock, hard rock, and heavy metal bands. And that got me like into maybe the more extreme stuff later on.
So that was like a organic process of you discovering music and taking steps further into more heavy or complex
Yeah.
music over the years. So by the time you started your first band, uh, did you have like taste formed in extreme music in general, or what sort of styles did you start and playing?
With the first like real band that I played that had gigs, they were like a old school-ish death metal band, and I was not really into the music, but for me it was a challenge to play that kind of music and to get play with people that are actually older than me, and we actually have concerts, even though they're like in on a small scale, like nothing big, but um, people were attending. It was local shows and stuff like that, and sometimes even outside of town. And that to me was important. And I thought like if the music is not 100% my thing, who cares? I learn and play the stuff, and then see it from there. And then I discovered actually in extreme metal, there's a lot of stuff possible that
Right.
is maybe not possible in a traditional rock music structure. So that was really interesting to me, and you could play fast and technical and all of that. And yeah, people wouldn't be like, "Hey, that's too much." People would be like, "Yes, more
Exactly.
of that, please. Please play faster and play more notes and stuff like that." And to a young musician, this is like awesome because um, you know yeah, when
Yeah.
you were absorbed with your instrument, then you can really put everything you learned in there. It's maybe
Yeah.
not the most musical approach, but it's fun, and also
Entertaining.
things happen that would not happen in a normal rock pop whatever band context. And yeah,
Yeah, I will say that once you break that barrier and you start enjoying more heavier, extreme, fast music, there's no coming back. You either like it or not, and you
Yeah.
want more of that challenge in your face. So I can understand why you decide to, let's say, stay on that lane for as a career, because you nowadays are widely known for being in the most fast and influential bands in the particular style of death metal that is, very skills demanding.
Yes,
Um,
and I think that is sorry to interrupt,
no,
but
no, please.
I will forget it though. That's the thing, because stuff is still possible, or was, I don't know, at this point. With music styles, the more and more they progress in time, the harder it becomes to really create something that's fresh, that's new,
Mm,
because a lot of things have been done
yes.
already. I mean, look at jazz history. I mean, the most interesting stuff happen always from the formation of various styles, and then
Mm,
halfway through, and then today, it almost becomes like a museum
mm,
when you go to jazz schools or something like that. You learn exactly how to play like somebody else, even though maybe the teachers say no, do your own thing, and but
yeah.
still that's what happens, right? Because in a curriculum you can only teach what's already there. You know and then it becomes this already preconceived thing, and metal is kind of getting there, I think. Like, it's harder to, maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but I think in death metal maybe that's the case, um that a lot of things have been said, and that it's really more difficult to create a style. Like when we did the Necrophagist record, this was like completely new. Like nobody combined things like elements like that. And it's still possible in the future, but I think it becomes more narrow and more narrow. Like the filter, it's more like a pyramid. Um,
Mm,
there's not as many possibilities anymore. But I thought back then there are more possibilities, because in the 90s, death metal wasn't still like, there was like more melodic death metal in that sense, like At the Gates and that kind of stuff. And then like the real heavy stuff with blast beats, and then the Swedish stuff. But it was all separated, and nobody like put elements of that together, or you know, and that was all still possible to do that, and progress um, the style itself coming from a background with different music, like more progressive music or something like that. And if you listen to some of the techie death metal bands today, it's- there's some parts are death metal, and other parts are like something else, like
it's very different.
completely different style. So and then where go from there, right? Also, it's getting more difficult, I think, to come up with something original. But back then, I thought, hey, there's still a lot of room to come up
Yeah.
with original stuff, and
Yeah.
that's why I chose this genre, because
Mm,
I thought, like, as a composer, it's really interesting to try new elements. There's still things that haven't been done yet, but I think
ah,
eventually, the more people take also idea from modern classical music and put that into metal, because I think there's a logical connection,
yeah.
um, especially in terms of note choice. If you listen to Stravinsky or Penderecki, stuff like that, and you listen to extreme metal, the instrumentation might be different, but the tonal material, well, um,
Yeah.
and the
For
more serious people get into that, it will, you know, find its way into the more extreme metal, because it's meant to be.
yeah, nowadays, and this started, for example, with Gorguts and Obscura. Like once this band started to interact with different elements outside of the realm of metal or death metal, things have become more interesting. And even musicians out of this sphere start to immerse in extreme metal. And nowadays, it seems like it's the generation of, experimenting and doing things your way, breaking the rules. And this is connected with the new album of Alkaloid, which I think once you get to a certain point, you maybe are not forced, but is entertaining or interesting the idea of looking back and see what you can do interesting, not just fast wise or with virtuosity, but also with atmosphere and even I don't know feelings throughout the music. But well, my next question, and because this highly demanding skills of style, which is prog death metal, your many involvements with other band or projects along the lines of this. I'm curious as to how would you describe your approach to drumming, or how has it evolved over the years?
Good question. I would say, um, hmm, hmm, hmm. Well, it's. I mean, I did a lot of the very extreme stuff, also fast stuff. But the first like extreme thing I did was necrophagist. That's like, well, a statement, right? And then Obscura, and actually, I thought it's a great idea to join Hate Eternal, and I thought,
Mm.
I'm like, oh damn it, then I have to like you play all that fast stuff. Oh my god, what what was I thinking? No, seriously, um, no, that I had really to practice like the ultra fast stuff because that's relentless, like the most extreme thing. I mean, besides bands like Nile and these bands, and Hate Eternal is one of the most extreme things you can do. And I thought like, you know, after that, I thought like, okay, I did all that, and well, mm, maybe go in a different direction. Also because the permanent fast playing especially with my feet gave me some trouble in my
Mm.
legs and stuff because my you know my technique is not as clean as let's say with my hands. So with my feet I had more difficulties and using more like force to actually play the notes required, and gave me some trouble in the long run. And I thought like, okay, then I could like get into techniques like swivel technique and whatever heel toe technique, like very specific techniques, and practice that for a couple of years to actually play the same stuff I play already. But I mean, I have to force myself to play it, but I'm still playing it. And then I can invest like 3 or 4 more years of constant practicing to play this thing a little bit smoother. And I thought,
Mm.
like, you know what? No, no, I'm not interested in that. I've done that. Like, if I'm getting like issues in my legs, unfortunately, so be it. Then just take that as a challenge to do something else.
Okay, so
And I
nowadays,
thought, like, where do I come from as a drummer? It's more like Bonham style, more like jazz
mm,
drum.
mm,
Um, um, like Tony Williams, for instance, big influence on me, and people like that, Buddy Rich, and these are like that's something I really, really care about, just in terms of drumming. The only drummers I ever watch on YouTube are mostly jazz drummers, and I don't say that to be hip or something like that. It's just I don't know. To me, that's the purest form of drumming and the most spontaneous form of drumming, and
yeah.
um, I just like the sound and the time feel, the swing,
Mm.
and all of that. And drummers that have that, man, I mean, that's like I instantly like drummers that have that swing. And I thought like, okay, I need to put that somewhere. I need to really get into that. And then COVID hit. I thought like, now is the time. Now I have some time to actually look into new techniques. And in 2003 or something, I started um, doing all the jazz jobs, and bought like the Steve Smith DVDs, um, and practice stuff. And then with necrophages and all the other stuff that happened, I had no time to further evolve that. But I thought, okay, now is the time to really get into that again and pick it up from where I left. Um, And yeah, that's, I would say, is the biggest development that when I play a normal groove or even double bass, there's still a little bit of swing in there. Not always, because sometimes the composition requires to be like really precise in a mathematical way. But I did that a lot with Necrophages, with Blotted Science, with a lot of recordings where I played like super tight and tried to nail every part. And there are also parts on the new Alkaloid that are like that, because the music requires it to be a little bit, mathematic, to have the mathematic exact time. But still, there's a little bit of, you know,
Free
push and
room.
pull. Yeah, there's still a lot of room. As nothing is quantized on that record or anything thing like that. And that's really what I kind of evolved into, like getting rid of that typical computerized time
Right.
feel of extreme metal these days. Like everything has to be on the grid and that kind of stuff. I'm really not interested in that anymore. Like, not at all. I've been there, I've done it, and it's difficult, and I respect it. People can do it, but to me, more interesting are the things that are not like that. If you, for instance, watch a drummer like Eloy Casagrande from Sepultura, I mean, damn it, he's not playing like a quantized machine. He plays tight, yes, but with a certain groove, with a certain swing, with a certain, you know,
Yeah.
emotion. And that is more interesting to me than the actual gridded technical metal, you know?
Yeah.
So I would say I played dirtier than before, dirtier, but also with more feel. That also
Mm.
fits with the style of Triptychon that I play for. I mean,
Right.
you cannot play their music with like a super mechanic humanoid time feel. I mean, sounds like crap. You really have to go with the flow and play more like feeling.
Yeah.
Basically, it sounds like a cliche, but it's not. I really looked into that and also analyzed time feels and all that stuff. And to me, the magic really happens when it's not on the grid.
Right. So with all of this experience with several bands involved and your personal project, nowadays, what does your experience dictates at the moment of, I don't know, starting writing a new song? Do you approach composing from a drummer perspective or a guitarist, or are these perspectives different at all?
I approach it from a song's perspective, I would say. When I
Right.
get an idea, most of the time, I mean, I get ideas either abstract, in an abstract form, like I walk around and I get like an idea in my head, like a vague rhythm or vague melody or something like that.
Mm.
And then I work it out later on. Like when I get it back into the studio, there was like, oh, I thought I had this conceptual idea about, I don't know, something. And then I try to put it in notes. Or I noodle around on, which happens not that often. I noodle around on the guitar and
Mm.
some ideas, you know, are created. But that's like improvise, like jamming stuff out. But that's not happening very often. More often it's like more conceptual things, like trying different chords. And then I thought like, okay, there's this chord and this chord here, and how do they go together? And in which style could I actually put them together in going from one to another? And then I have and the thing is, I never remember how I got any ideas. I mean, then they are there somehow, and then how I got there, I don't know. And it starts all with one idea, with one particular riff, and then I write a song around that idea, or there's nothing more coming out of it, so I put it on hold somewhere. Like I have a folder on my PC that's called Basement,
Mm.
and I write down all the notes, all the ideas, and put it in that folder. And sometimes I get a different idea, and I thought like, hey, wait a minute, there was this idea back then, like a few months back. Maybe they go together. How do they go together? And then I, you know, try to put them together, and then maybe it works into a song.
Right.
Sometimes it's more like solving a puzzle. Sometimes I have a song written and I'm not happy with one particular part, like a chorus or something, and then I'm like, okay, let's wait. Maybe something else will come up. I will come up with something else for that part, and I just take time and well, it's still then the same idea fishing mode where I, try to create individual riffs, individual ideas, and at a certain point, there's an idea that goes together for that structure of the song. I work on a song or on a composition very, very deeply into terms of structurizing.
Okay.
Structurization for me is really key. Um, I thought about this whole composition process, and to me, every any kind of music could be divided into four different elements, which is notes, rhythm, form, which is structure and all of that, and dynamics. And
Mhm.
when you put that, because if you take a note sheet of a piano piece or something like that, you can be sure that every notation of any song or any musical piece or anything has notes on it. Rhythm. The notes are presented in a certain rhythm. It's structured in a certain way, and dynamically, it's faster, slower, louder, quieter, and so on. So it's dynamics, and working from there, I think a lot of especially young musicians, they have all these ideas, like all the riffs, like the rhythms and the notes, they are there, but they don't know how to put that in a dynamic context
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to put that in a structure that kills. Sometimes, I mean, it's a process, and it's definitely not like I know, like this is the perfect way to structure a song. No, I don't know that. It's just like for my ideas that I have, I think that when you try to take the songs that I write apart and put them differently in a different order or something, the song will fall apart. I can guarantee that because I pay attention to that dynamic process of songwriting and to the structure of the song. Like it gives a lot of detail into that, and a lot of work goes into that, like make it flawless in that sense that for this particular song, that's the flawless structure, and that's what it has to be. And this part has to, be repeated exactly that often and exactly that length and exactly that. And I throw out a lot of ideas. If
Mm.
I have a song and I see on the arranger or something like, ah, it's a little long here. Throw it out. I mean, you can use it somewhere else. Even if you like the idea, just throw it out and make it as compact as possible. Sometimes that's still 8 minutes. Well, um, I mean, I could really limit myself to only do like 3-4 minute songs and just make them like the core idea, but I don't want that. If I wanted that, I could do it, like for 100% sure. Um, I could write songs with only two ideas, with two riffs, or with one riff. I've done it, but it's not what I want. You know, I don't find that interesting a lot of the time, and so I would say I see it really from the basic idea. What's the first idea of a song, and then I work it out from there, and that's more the song perspective. I would never compose a song from a particular drummer perspective. Um,
Mm.
the drum line is always there to complement the song and the structure of the song and the dynamic flow of the song. That's what I do when I do session work. That's what I do mostly. I look at the different parts, and my first thought is like, how can I make the transition from one part into another like smooth and without being edgy too much? If I want to be edgy, because that's the effect.
So,
Okay, then I can do that, but on purpose. But most of the time, I think like, okay, how can I make the song flow? This is the first thing. Sometimes it's better to take one part out or put it somewhere else. stuff like that. Sometimes it's necessary to reduce your own input. Sometimes it's really helpful to just play an AC/DC part if the song requires that.
Yeah.
Depends on the music. I'm asked a lot to play on progressive and fast stuff, so naturally that stuff fits. It just within a style that is very busy already. It's you still have to find a balance to not overplay, to not overdo it, and to find the perfect balance. And a good starting point is to look at the song structure and see which are the ideas that come back throughout the song, and have a connection there. And like if you zoom out, so to
Yeah.
speak,
Yeah.
where is the connection between the parts, and then zoom in. Okay, from part A to part B, how can I get to part B?
Mm.
Like, so that the listener thinks, oh yeah, of course, part B. What else? That's the only solution, part B.
Yeah.
And then part C, yes. Yes, I've been waiting for that part. So people are not, they can follow the song and still be surprised, but stuff like that. And that's where I come from mainly as a composer. Um, Looking at the ideas that are there and see where I can go with that. And I I would always take that approach over the approach of a certain instrument. By the way,
Okay.
this is alcohol free.
um,
Mentioning that.
um, well, what I can gather is that as a session drummer, you are there to articulate the structure, give, I don't know, a smooth movement to all, or even enhance the different nuances that the song asks, right? But also as a composer, you like to sit back, let the song sit in, like you say, zoom out, and maybe throw out an idea or recycle it later. But you are there for the purpose to serve the song first, right? But what I come for from my question is that, well, there's something that I like to call the drums as the conductor of a song, and this is interesting to me, and maybe you agree or not. But there's a band called Ulcerate, which I think their drummer is. This is in relation to something you previously answered, like giving free room or a space to articulate or give a different kind of dynamics to a song. And I think that this is a very specific band that maybe the drums are there to articulate, to be the conductor of, I don't know, the different motifs of one sound of a band. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yes, I would agree to that, and I would say that I mean, even though I like their sound, I think without that kind of drumming that he does, it would be less interesting without
Yeah,
him doing all that
definitely.
stuff. Like it really puts it all together, and then it makes sense through this very different. The music is very dissonant, which I like to begin with, and then you have a drummer that really shines on those parts. Also because it seems like it's not the guitars and bass, it's not as full. It's dissonant chords and stuff and riffs and so on, but there's a lot of room for the drums to articulate stuff. And yeah, I would totally agree to that. And I think, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much probably, I don't know how they write. Probably they have this approach of taking the drums and the drum parts as a very important part of the actual composition, where I would just play whatever, you know,
Yeah.
whatever to make that dynamic impact that I'm looking for. And I could imagine, I don't know that, but I could imagine that they come up with really specific drum ideas, and they played like that, and they are part of the actual composition. Um, that's that's actually how it was in Necrophages. Like every note was
Mm.
written out. I don't know if it's that particular, but yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah.
And also another thing that you mentioned about guitarist focusing on riffs and structure, but less on dynamic. I will argue that focusing on dynamic is something that a drummer will always do, like first. Like,
Yeah, I'm not so
well,
sure about that.
maybe. But there's another band, I don't know if you're familiar with them, called Botanist from San Francisco. Uh, this is one band from a guy called Otrebor, which does black metal without guitars, only drumming and dulcimer, hammered
Okay.
dulcimer, and he started composing with the drums parts first, and then it all goes from there. And this is an interesting result as a whole. I mean, there are people out there trying different things, and for what I can recall, he writes from the drum first, and
Hmm.
it all goes from there.
Well, if you only have drums and a dulcimer, then makes sense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Because you cannot start with a heavy riff then. I would say, yeah, but that sounds really interesting. And no, I've definitely, if I heard the band, I would definitely remember it, I guess.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's very
I
particular.
still have to check that out
Yeah, I will
for sure.
send you the name. I will send you the name for sure. Talking about the main reason of this conversation, which is that your band Alkaloid is coming out with a third album on September 15, which, by the way, this is a holiday celebrating the start of independence fight here in Mexico. So
Hmm.
we will have something to celebrate while we listen to this album. But yeah, in general, what is your opinion of this album? What does it have to offer for new and old fans of the band?
Um, yeah, good question. I think this album is maybe a little more difficult to listen to than the previous one. The previous one was very melodic, I would say, with some certain songs having a strong 80s vibe or prog vibe or like bands like King Crimson, Yes, and that kind of stuff. And we combined it with death metal. And so for some reason, this album, lack of a better term, brutal or more extreme. It's really there are more heavy riffs, I would say, than the previous two albums. I think the album as a total is maybe a little more demanding
Mm,
in terms of yeah, it's more on the extreme side of metal. It's darker than the previous two
yeah.
albums and more aggressive, I would say, definitely more aggressive. I don't know why that is. Also, as part of the sound, because when I was mixing the album, I or when we dialed in the guitar tone, I had a certain idea in mind with the guitar tone, and I really wanted to have that, and um, I felt like I have to make this album sound like harsher than the previous ones. Because if you have like softer sounding, like soft, I mean it's still metal, the previous two albums, but I mean in the sense of that everything is like very clear. You can, as we say in Germany, you can hear each hair growing in the guitar sound. And every little, the slightest detail, the slightest stuff that is there, you can actually hear it, and it's very precise and very dry in that sense, and very direct in your face, get aggressive guitar sound. And um, also the vocals, I wanted them to make like that, to have that impact. And Linus on bass, our bassist Linus, he didn't really use a lot of fretless bass, what he is actually known for. Because I told him, hey, I think this is gonna be more aggressive this time. I think we need more fretted bass. And actually, he ended up almost only using fretted bass, which is also a more, like, I would say, a more aggressive sound in general, because fretless bass sounds very gentle, almost like
Mm,
soft and melodic. Has yeah, I mean I love fretless bass, but for this album, like everything is really sounding a little more direct and a little more aggressive, and um is a little bit darker composition wise than the previous album. I cannot say whether people will like that better or not. I have no idea. But to us, or to me at least, in producing the album, it was something I just felt. I felt that way because also I kind of react to what's happening, and the previous album, Liquid Anatomy, the songs came out that way and needed to be very, very, very colorful in terms of production and guitar sounds and in general sounds. There's so many sound layers and colors in there, and this one is much darker, and I think it's also because of the music. But the other reason is that well, we've done very melodic stuff from our point of view on the last album. Why do that exactly again? And then I'm seeing a lot of bands who do clean vocals in extreme metal and who play the folksy guitar parts and being more progressive. And yes, and it's all good and I like it, but I thought like, hey, why not do the opposite and actually make an album that's harder, that goes in, the opposite, the I would say the opposite Opeth effect, when Opeth
Oh,
turned away from death metal and made like 70s prog. I thought like, why not do the opposite?
yeah.
And make a couple of songs on, or a majority on of the songs on that album that consists of heavy and aggressive riffs, and make it a real death metal record with weirdness, of course, like the typical weirdness that we put into our music. But um, I don't know, it felt like it needed it to be a statement that actually, if we want, we can really be brutal and
Right.
go into that direction as well. And the songs came out that way, so I thought like, okay, then let's produce it in that way, like really in your face, super heavy guitars. And yeah, that's what this album
Well,
is.
I will say that we, the fans of the band, have come to expect something different from the previous two records. And the third time offered a challenge, but not in a bad taste, I will say. And one of the things that I like in general, even for the Alkaloid standards, is how different and vast the textures, many, many textures, the kind of different harmonic shapes here and there. And it has a lot of mood swings also. So there is much about it that one cannot guess. It's a surprise. And I think that when you have a main style that relies heavily on speed or skills on destructive force, the best that you can do is like, I don't know, subvert the expectations, maybe of the listening experience. And I think that this record is showcases that the most. Of course, there is a natural evolution, but at the same time, I will say that it kind of distance from the previous records, as you for the things that you mentioned before. Um, I remember listening Carbon Phrases for the first time all those
Hmm.
years ago, and being immediately blown away by maybe the behavior of what would you will call death metal. And again, as I was listening to this album and then get to the point of the Numen song, I remember that feeling again of discovering something new, because it's almost like you destroy the notion of what is death metal, what is strict metal, or how it's supposed to be structured, or the sustaining elements of it as a music style. Because personally, I don't really remember listening to or having a similar experience of that song. So I think that this album is for people to discover something new, even for Alkaloid standards, and that's what I like the most in general.
That's great to hear. I mean, for me, I mean, I recorded most of the album. I mixed the entire album, so I'm not really objective anymore. I've
Right.
heard this so often, and I'm really happy about the result, but still, it's sometimes I can just say, well, I don't know. That's what I think, but it could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
Because I'm somebody who listens to the I wish I could like delete all that memory and just listen to it the first time fresh. I don't know how I would react to it. No idea. But that's good to hear. Um, but yeah, of course I hope that the people who like the previous two records still will be into this one. But of course, the third album of any band is something that's like for some people make or break kind of thing.
Right, right,
But I can also say like the next album, which I'm pretty sure it will not take another 5 years, and we will be quicker than that. And that could be something totally different then again, like more melodic, because the heavy dark riff thing, we've done it now. Like
right,
check.
right.
Well, let's see what's in there for the next time. Let's see. I mean, could be something like totally different, very melodic, or stuff like that, or conceptual, or something else. We have to think about that and come up with something. But yes, I find interesting to not repeat yourself, because then it becomes a formula. Actually, that's what I do that a little bit on my solo records. Not that I constantly repeat myself, but it's not, I don't have the urge. It's strange. People usually who have solo records is what they want is do something like Alkaloid, like explore everything. And I do the opposite. I have this
Yeah,
super progressive band, and in my solo stuff, I take all the songs that are actually much easier and much more generic, but I still like them, and I put them in there and like, it's like more technical, death, thrash, whatever. But I don't have the pressure of being like innovative all the time. Um,
yeah, and I
so,
would say,
but I don't want it to become a formula. But if I have like things where or songs where I'm like, well, we've done that plenty of times. Well, maybe I just take that, you know, and put it out as a solo song because, yeah, why not? I mean, it's just a fun project for me, my solo thing. There's like no pressure involved. Just the death metal I would like to listen to. That's like my solo project, whatever. With Alkaloid, there's more ambition involved, and we really think like we should not repeat ourselves. Also, it's a real band, and we want the impact of every band member in our sound, like specifically. Um, so that depends. It depends on the development of each musician. Funny thing, like this, the Fungi song,
yeah,
that was composed by Chris Münzner, who actually, you know, writes stuff for Obscura and all of that, and he's more like technical and neoclassical, and he wrote like the most old school sounding death metal song on this album.
yeah,
So,
it does.
well, that's also something where he would be like, well, I don't know, I wouldn't put that in any of my other bands, but in Alkaline I can do whatever, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and
And
no, please continue whatever you
yeah,
want to
I
say.
was done basically.
Okay. Yeah, this is as a collective, it's very interesting to find things that you usually don't hear in their other projects. And also it's a healthy thing that you have like your outlet for just relax and do what you like without thinking of being innovating and ambition. That's very healthy for an artist, I would say. So for now, by now we know a Cambian explosion and a clusterfuck, which are good examples, I would say, of what the album has to offer. But then, if I understand correctly, the song Numen is the third single coming, right? Which is like a centerpiece for the album. What?
Yes, I mean, Maureen was specific about that when, usually when with well labels, our label Season of Mist, they have like an idea about how to promote, and one
Yeah,
part about promotion is releasing like singles before the actual album drops. I mean, that's nothing new. It's pretty standard, I would say. And then the question is which songs to release. And then Maureen said, well, we should release the most different stuff, like
mm,
um, not let's say the opening song and Clusterfuck. Not that they are completely similar, but they have similarities, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah. Of
Um,
this feeling, like you mentioned King Crimson, this has like this sort of vintage, epic thing.
okay.
right?
Yes, yes, maybe. Yeah, maybe. And but there's like a similarity. I don't know. Maybe commercially to really have like 3 singles that are super like the most similar and present like one thing. Maybe people will grasp that better, but I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter to us. We thought like, no, let's do the opposite. I mean, Clusterfuck made a first good single because it's I would say the most accessible song on the record.
Mm.
And yeah, and we liked the song, and then we put it out as a video. Fits. Next song is completely different. And Numen is very different from both songs. So that is where we could actually, because for us it's more important that people who are interested in that band or even have never heard the band before and actually for the first time they hear those 3 songs that they um, say, okay, I don't know. I like the first song. I'm not sure about the second and the third. I don't know. Maybe I have to listen to it more. Or, um, but they get a large range of feelings or styles. And I think this is, well, for us, more important because it shows the variety of the whole album, as you said earlier. Um, because we're an album band, and it's important to us to, you know, that it's really that also the song order makes sense, and it's really the whole album is composed from each song to another, like that it makes sense to listen to the whole thing, and um, yeah, and
Yeah,
I don't know. I get bored easily. That's maybe the reason. So I think like put out there as many colors as possible, many shapes and colors as possible. Um, from my experience, in terms of marketing, it's actually better to have one very narrow style that you do over and over and over, and people get it. Because most of the time, when people want to listen to something else, they don't listen to the same band, they listen to a different band. It's easy for them. But as a
right.
band, you're stuck with that particular style. I mean, I respect that band very much, but think about Meshuggah.
Mm.
As much as you can do with that little thing, I would say.
Well,
I mean,
and
that it's mind blowing how much they can make out of that.
yeah,
Like it's really good, but it's still just that thing. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
and,
And
and
yeah, of course, you get recognized super easily, immediately. If something sounds like Meshuggah, it sounds like Meshuggah. It's
yeah,
almost their own style, which is another accomplishment. And but for me, it wouldn't be something I would be interested in doing
right.
because it's just one little thing from this vast ocean that is music. So that's what I mean. So and if that doesn't play well commercially, well, so be it, because we're not a commercial band anyway, so who
Exactly,
cares?
exactly. You
Yeah.
are more about, I don't know, finding new places as a composer.
Yeah.
And I can see that you are or were responsible for compose, let's say, the beginning of the album and then A Full Desire and also the closer track Alpha Hour. And I will say that you are responsible for writing the most colorful songs on the album. Um, for example, A Fool's Paradise, Fool's Desire, sorry, which is one of my favorite songs on the album. But
Oh.
were there any specifics in terms of how any of you should approach uh, a song in order to structure the album as an experience?
Mm. You mean
For
where that
example,
song
for
would
example,
would
for example, you did the beginning on and the last song. So this was like a result of, I don't know, examining the list of the songs and saying, okay, this fits better for the intro
yeah,
part.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Yeah. For me, it was clear which would be the opener and which would be the last track, and then it's
okay.
little. Then we have to see. Okay, second track.
Hmm.
But
Well,
make a good playlist, like a good playlist.
right.
Something like that. You could disagree with that. You could say, actually, song order, I'm not so keen about that. Maybe they should have placed the song somewhere else or whatever. Well,
Well,
but yeah, I thought like when you come from the song before Fool's Paradise, it's like the Shub Niggurath song, and that's a very like blast beat, death metal, brutal song. Then I
yeah.
thought, okay, there's this long acoustic intro in Fool's Paradise that fits, because after listening to like that whole heavy, fast blast beat song, maybe it's good to calm down a little and have
Yeah.
this more epic song.
And
That's how I think about it, like how to structure songs on an album, like song order specifically. Um, what's interesting to listen, for the
to
listener. I mean, a more commercial band would structure their songs like, what are the hits? We put them first in order, and the more you progress, the less interesting the songs become,
right.
usually. Um, you could see that, like, I don't know if you know the record "Peace of Mind" by Iron Maiden. You could totally see that, like
Mm,
I mean, except for the very last song, which is more epic song, but the further you go after the Trooper, it's like,
yeah.
maybe.
And well, if I will try to describe my experience with this album, um, as you mentioned, it has like a lot of fluctuations in the beginning, until the funky song, which, as I
Mhm.
understand, lyrically, it seems like the album can be split in two parts. But this is also displayed in the dynamics of the album, because after the funky song, it's all centered in aura and atmosphere. It almost loses the form of, being uh, rhythm inclined. And you don't, at the end of the album, you don't come back to the beginning of the album. It's another thing. It's another place. The last song is, you can it's like you can almost grasp the beginning of the ideas melodic wise, but it's the ending. It's a closer song. For me, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. Um, this kind of experience as a whole. So yeah,
That's also
on
one of the reasons why we put that into two CDs. I mean, two CDs would equal like four LPs. No, four sides of LPs, right? Or
yeah.
is it more than that? I think it's more than that. I don't even know. I have to wait
Well,
until the LPs are done. But the side, like, this is also like the very last song on the album is, of course, just on one side of one LP,
mm,
and then it's over. I would think if somebody buys the LP, you have to switch it over, and then put the needle there, and then it starts again. You know,
yeah,
and then how to structure the song order in that respect, or why we put that on two CDs. Actually, it would be one CD would be long enough to host all the songs, but still, actually, the label owner of Season of Mist, Michael Barbarian, he said like, "Phew, it's hard to listen through the whole thing. Like he's he says he stops at a certain point and takes a break and then comes back to it. I thought like, hey, this makes sense, because like you said, at a certain after, like when Numen starts, it becomes a different thing somehow,
yeah,
more
yeah,
spacey, if you will. And then it also makes sense to say, okay, the first CD, whatever, the first part of the album is more cohesive, longer but more cohesive metal songs. Then you
yeah.
have the acoustic song, and then you have all the weird stuff happening, the more spacey songs. And then I thought like, yeah, it makes sense to put that on two separate CDs, so that you have actually to, if you still listen, to CDs. I mean, nobody does that anymore, I guess, but still, you have to switch off. Like, okay, the CD is over. You have to take it out, take the new CD in, and then it starts. another CD starts, and that's also a
Yeah,
different feeling than just listening to it on Spotify
yeah.
or just digitally without pause. So it's a different kind of a different format. So the different format requires a different song spacing.
See, yeah, and well, to sum it all up, in my opinion, the first half offers surprises, but in the more classical manner of Alkaloid, and
Yeah,
the second half is just, I don't know, it just projects different things, like a different momentum. I love the two parts, honestly. But one of my favorite songs composed is composed by you. I mentioned before is "Full Desire." I like the
okay.
feeling of a. It has this 80s vibe, like a heavy
Yeah,
metal vibe, but
yeah. I
but
mean, hmm?
but
Go.
it's countered with what I like about the band, which are the vocals of Morian, different techniques on these songs. I don't know. It's just very unique, but also very catchy, and
Yes, it's that. Here's the thing with his vocals. I only wrote the music, and I thought like, okay, this is what we could do on vocals, but I have no idea. Um, let him do that.
mm,
But I could see. I know. I mean, I know his style. I know how he works, and I could see what, without even having him in the room, I could see what maybe fits and what doesn't. And this there's a certain I would say the Black Sabbath riff. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe you know what I mean.
yeah,
Um, I had that for a long time actually, like for years, and I never knew where to put it. And I thought, damn, I have to use that riff. I like the riff. It's very simple, but I really like it. And with the right setup, it could have, impact. So, and of course, it was clear. Like that's why how I think in terms of structure first, and then composing. I thought like, okay, maybe have something like that builds up, builds up, builds up, and then silence, and then the heavy Black Sabbath riff. Like in,
mm,
I don't know, what is that song by Black Sabbath with in the Dio years? The Sign of the Southern Cross. I think there's a similar thing where they have like a acoustic intro. It's not as long as our song, but acoustic intro, and then there's this heavy riff, and it's very simple, and then it stands out because the dynamics work, going
yeah,
from soft and then to this full on guitar riff. They did something similar with Heaven and Hell, like that band that actually is supposed to be Black Sabbath, but then there was Sharon Osbourne anyway. Um, on Heaven and Hell, on that song Bible Black, they did something similar, like where they have this acoustic intro and then it's a heavy riff. It's very simple in that sense, and you've
yeah,
heard it before. But I thought, like, yeah, in general, this way of structuring something is a great idea. It's a great trick. It's really a trick. You have something that's acoustic, and you then the heavy guitars um, come in. That always works. And then
yeah,
I thought, like, okay, how can I make this work in an interesting way, like in a more progressive way, and so that I write something that's meant to be with the riff that comes after and with the song structure. And then I thought, like, okay, I should not, if Black Sabbath already did that, I should not stop with that riff and make it the heaviest riff or like the most extreme riff. I thought, like, no, I have to go over the edge and then like really make it death metal.
yeah,
And then I did that, and I thought, like, no, maybe I should come back to more prog stuff and then be even more extreme than I was before and end the song in that way. That like getting from the acoustic intro to towards 250 BPM blast beats in the sake of 8 minutes and build up until that part. And that's how the composition is. I don't know if you would analyze it on like the notes happening. It's probably rather traditional what's happening. It's like not nothing like Numen or something where Morian composed like really weird tonal cascades on top of each other and rhythms and so on. It's crazy. And probably Fool's Desire is nothing like that. It's more like in the traditional metal range. But I
yeah,
thought like, okay, let's be um, you know, virtuous with the structure and the dynamics of the song and make that the core of the song so that it works. If you put it together differently, that's what I meant earlier. The song falls apart. It doesn't work
Yeah,
anymore in the same way. And
like
yeah, that's
like
where I come from a lot with writing stuff.
yeah, it can be perceived as a solid song, but the dynamic is very fragile. It can all
Yeah.
fall apart. And one thing that I like is that it goes to some place. I enjoy the very sparkly melodic guitars almost at the end. But another thing that I think makes it I don't know, even more efficient is being um, second guessed by the other song by Christian, which is, I don't know, it creates a wider contrast in the album. And
Hmm.
that's something that I enjoy very much. Do you have a favorite? Sorry, will you say something?
Favorite song.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really like the opening track because
Okay.
I don't know. It's um hard to say why. It's opening. I always like opening tracks because they have this energy. Like,
Mm,
you know, an album starts. Yes, it has this certain. I mean, good openers have that. I hope this one has it too. That it
it
has
does.
this opening energy, like something new is starting here, and this
Yeah.
drive.
Yeah.
That's what I like about the song, and I like the melodies. And what I in particular, maybe that's a more a nerdy detail, but there's at a certain point in the first song, there's like an up-tempo swing
Mm,
um, on the drums and with bass and stuff, like a break, whatever. And this up-tempo swing, um, I think that there is no band and no song in existence. I have never not heard one song where you have a death metal song with an up-tempo um, bebop swing. It does not exist. This is the first time in history. I maybe I'm wrong about that, and I just don't know. But I think this is the first time an actual metal drummer plays an up-tempo swing in the way the jazz drummers from the 19 whatever 50s did it. You know,
right.
uh, you could say, oh, well, that's a cheap idea. Just take something else and put it there, like a mashup. But yes, that's what I did. But in the context of a death metal song, a progressive death metal song, this is something new because you have a lot of bands who really do well progressive songs and long songs and complexity and all of that. Like, I mean, the list of bands who are doing this is very, very long, and I probably like a lot of these bands. But then I thought, like, okay, what's the one thing nobody of these bands have ever done? It's this. Okay, let's do it. and, and that's something that I really, really like because you think up until that point, okay, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, sure, it's good Alkaloid song, but it's still, we've heard that. And then there's like an element, no, no, hasn't been done before in the context of metal. So there you go.
I was gonna ask you about your favorite bit, drumming bit, but I think you already answered that. A little
Drumming, I
bit of
mean, yeah, I mean, since that's the thing. In the first two songs, there's like real jazz
yeah,
parts,
yeah,
like a real swing and jazz parts. It's not, um, sometimes like jazzy or groove or something. No, it's yeah, it's a complete switch of styles, and work with the same equipment, just differently played. You know,
right.
um, so yeah,
Okay.
that's what I like in terms of drumming. And then in Chris' song, like the fungi from I don't know how to pronounce the Lovecraft stuff. You got
Me neither.
yeah
You got,
yeah
yeah,
yeah. Anyway, Chris' song. What makes it interesting? It's that's actually an old school metal song, and then has this weird 7/8 almost Mahavishnu orchestra tune in that. And towards the end of the song, there's like a drum solo over that section, which is a fusion part. Like this could be done by a fusion band.
yeah. But
you know, Passport or something like that, like fusion band. But it's actually a traditional old school heavy Morbid Angel vibe, slower death metal song.
Yeah. For what is
But
worth,
you mash it up, and then you create something new. You know.
for what is worth, my favorite ending of this album for one song is in particular that from the Fungi song. This is a big question. I don't know if I should ask you or your comfortable answer about the concept of the album of or what I can observe. But well, some of the ideas on the beginning of the album, at least for the first three songs, is that are about the continuity of consciousness, the evolution of ourselves as complex entities, and in third place, a post question, which I read on the information about the album, is what motivates us to evolve into something bigger than ourselves. So I can perceive that these ideas are closer related to a guy called Terence McKenna. I don't know if at some point Morian was inspired or influenced by him, or if he told you about that. But my whole question is, what can you tell me about these concepts, or what is your personal take on it?
To be honest, I cannot tell you that much because it's more like the lyric
Yeah.
concept and the album art and all of that. A lot of the stuff is astrophysics, which I have no clue about. Like
Okay.
zero. And Morian is really deep into that, also mathematics and science and all of that
Really
stuff.
deep.
And yeah, and it's actually accurate. Like he worked with an actual physicist to write Numen and recursion and the folding so that it actually makes sense on a scientific scale, that it really could be possible what he's describing. And there's not so much I can say about that. I mean,
I
Marian, he could probably tell you like hours. And I would actually suggest, and he will gladly do so in fluent Spanish, that if you want to do a second part of the
yeah,
interview,
yeah.
once
I
he's
would,
back from his trip, he's somewhere in Greenland or somewhere,
yeah.
exploring like ice cascades. I don't know, weird stuff. Fits and that he tells you like in detail because he can do that. It's really interesting. Once he does it, I only understand half of what he's talking about, but yeah, because I'm not. You really have to learn the science, and when he explains, it makes a lot of sense. But I could not I could not go into that and really explain it because when he explains it to me, I kind of understand that, but I could not repeat that. So
Yeah, perfect. Well, I was already planning to ask for a second part interview with him because all of the things described here are very interested and it resonates with me. But thank you for giving me proper context on what the album is and on what I appreciate. I appreciate your time and
sure.
hopefully we can talk at another time.
Cool.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. It was really nice. I mean, yeah.